Did you miss out on this week's Yu-Gi-Oh! Headlines? Well, it's time to get you up to speed on last week in Yu-Gi-Oh! What's going on, guys? It's Cimo, and welcome to Last Week in Yu-Gi-Oh! The show where we cover all of the biggest headlines from the previous week. Now, this past week, not only did we have YCS San Diego, but we had a ton of other stuff going on, so we're gonna go ahead and get right into it. Starting off with a really big piece of news coming out of the OCG is the fact that we're going to be getting a new structure deck following Wave of Light, which is actually going to be titled Curse of the Dark. It's kind of fitting that right after we get the Light structure deck, we're going to be getting a dark themed structure deck. Now, I believe in Japan this is going to be released in March of 2018, which means we won't get it until a little bit later after that, which makes sense because I don't think we're getting the Wave of Light structure deck until at least February of next year anyway. But the thing is, this is a really good opportunity for Konami to reprint some cards like Allure of Darkness. Now, I know Allure of Darkness has had several printings in the past, but even for a common, Allure of Darkness is still an incredibly expensive card, and this is another good opportunity to reprint it and make it more accessible for players to access. So there's a lot of other cool cards they could reprint in there as well. It'll be really curious to see what cards are going to be in the OCG version, and hopefully that follows suit with the TCG, because as we well know, that doesn't always seem to be the case when we get the imported products from the OCG to the TCG. Now, moving on to the next piece of news, we had a Jump promo that's going to be a Trickstar themed card, and that's really interesting because I always find it fascinating when they make the promo archetype specific rather than generic, something like Link Karibo, for instance, where it's much more, niche in its application, because if by making it a Trickstar exclusive promo, only the Trickstar players are going to be really excited for it. But for the Trickstar players out there, this is an incredibly powerful card. So it's a level 5 with 2000 attack, and if you only control Trickstar monsters, you get to special summon it, which if you're playing a Trickstar dedicated deck, that's usually going to be the case. And in addition to that, it's also able to act as a pseudo-honest for the deck. So rather than acting like honest, it basically just doubles the attack of whichever Trickstar monster you discard and use its effect on. Now, it's not as good as honest in that respect, but the one thing you have to realize is this: it makes Candina and Lycoris extremely big monsters, and the fact that it's a Trickstar in the name means that Trickstar now has a searchable honest upon this card's release. And frankly, that's a lot stronger than running honest, because now that it's searchable, even though some Trickstar builds are choosing not to run honest, the fact that it's searchable makes it much more appealing, because rather than having to hard draw it, you're able to search it through Light Stage, through Candina, through a plethora of different ways, because the deck has so many ways to access all of the deck's engine pieces. So the fact that this Trickstar card is now essentially an engine piece is a really nice addition, and there's a lot of really cool tricks you can do to kind of just help inflict damage to your opponent, no pun intended. Now, on top of new cards, I mean, when we're talking about new cards, this was like the week of new cards, because one after another we were getting Link monsters just released out of nowhere. It was Link monster madness. So starting off, we had Summon Sorceress, which is a generic Link 3, but is capable of just doing some absolutely ridiculously crazy combos, which people have already been posting videos of. Heroes got a Link monster. Then there was a ton of other generic Link monsters, like a generic Link 2 and Link 3 that just require 2 monsters or 3 monsters, so they're almost better than Decode Talker and Proxy Dragon in their own respective right. Now, obviously they might not be as strong as something like Decode Talker or something like that, but the fact that they just required 2 monsters or 3 monsters means that any deck is capable of playing them. And plus, in addition to that, the Link 3 one specifically has all of its markers pointing downwards, meaning that you're not worrying about giving your opponent a Link arrow and opening up another extra monster zone for them to use. So it's completely generic. These are some really powerful Link monsters that any deck is going to be able to take advantage of, and I think that's something that a lot of decks desperately need, because there are some decks that are just begging for Link monsters, so this is a good start, although, obviously some more archetype themed Link monsters would be more ideal. But that takes us on to the Link Vrains pack, because we got some more announcements for these cards, and oh man, these just keep coming and coming. And now, to be fair, these aren't, you know, the best Link monsters out of the Link Vrains pack that we've seen, but they're still really cool and good support nonetheless. Starting off with the Shaddoll one, I think the Shaddoll one had a lot of expectations, very high, especially after we saw the Burning Abyss Link monster. And you look at the Shaddoll one, and it has a cool effect that you can basically use it as like a Shaddoll fusion in a way, but the biggest issue this card has is that it requires 2 flip monsters as Link material. And the reason why that's so bad is because flip monsters inherently need to be placed face down, and because, as we all know, you can't link with flip monsters, or excuse me, with monsters that are face down, so it kind of is counterintuitive to the flip mechanic that it requires 2 flip monsters. It could have easily been 2 Shaddoll monsters, or 2 Dark monsters, or 2 Spellcaster monsters. I think 2 Shaddoll monsters would have been much more ideal, because then it's still good for the Shaddoll archetype, but then it's not as, you know, restrictive as something as 2 flip monsters. So it's really unfortunate, because it's very difficult to get 2 flip monsters face up on the field, and I think it's just, this was really just a missed opportunity for Shaddoll. Now, I know a lot of Shaddoll players are disappointed, but who knows, maybe if we eventually do get Construct back, maybe we'll see Shaddoll seeing some play. There's also the Inzektor Link monster. Frankly, I don't think anyone was really like too excited about this. The effect isn't even really that good. I mean, it's kind of cool to see the support, but it's nothing really like, oh my god, Inzektors are the next best thing, or anything like that. There's also the Prophecy or Spellbook Link monster revealed as well, and it's a really cool one because it kind of has a Spellbook Library of the Crescent-like effect built into it, which is really neat because that just means you have more access to more of your spellbooks. But again, this is kind of for an older archetype, and yeah, the OCG has Judgment, I believe, at 1, but again, it's, you know, it's one of those things that it's cool support, but I don't think it's going to be really shaking up the meta over there anytime soon. I could be wrong, but just based on my instincts, I don't really think it's going to be anything too crazy. But it's not to, you know, we're not to downplay the fact that this is still an incredibly good set overall, because it's providing so many cool Link monsters for a lot of fan favorite archetypes, and there's still plenty more to be seen. We also got the Gem Knight one released as well, and there's already FTKs on the internet of people using the Gem Knight Link monster, as well as like the Crystron Link monster and things like that, just to enable some absolutely absurdly broken FTKs. It's really funny that a lot of the times with these Link monsters, like with the Aroma Mage one, and now the Crystron one, and then the now the Gem Knight one, that every time we get a new one, like an FTK just seems to spawn out of nowhere. So I don't know if that's exactly good for the game, but it's kind of cool to see what people can come up with as a result of these new Link monsters release. Now, moving forward from there, we do have a brand new set coming out after Extreme Forces, which is already released in Japan, but it's going to be called Flames of Destruction. This is a really cool set. It's going to have more Trickstar support, as well as more Goki support, as we've seen already released. Those are only the few cards that we have so far, but again, we still have Extreme Force here to come out in the TCG, but this is going to be the next set coming out in the OCG, which is probably in the next month or so. So we're going to be getting some new leaks on that, I would imagine, in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for more updates on there, because anytime we get a new set, there's always going to be some generic busted cards, you know, like Evenly Matched, so it's who knows what Konami's going to come up with next. Now, as you guys all know, YCS San Diego did take place this past weekend, and I was in attendance. It was a pleasure just meeting each and every one of you that I got to meet, so thank you guys for making it such a wonderful experience. I'm going to be covering YCS San Diego a little bit more in depth in a little later time, probably in tomorrow or the next day's video, because there's a lot to talk about from this event. I mean, ABC took 3rd place, Spiral, Trickstar, and Pendulum are still the dominant decks. There was there's so much variety though, because even though the top cut was primarily 3 or 4 different decks, all the decks that were in the main field, even at the top tables, there was still a wide variety of decks that were in contention. There was Dinosaurs, there was Infernoids, Magibullets actually made it all the way up until like round 7 or 8, which is rather impressive considering that people didn't really have high hopes for the deck. There was just actually wide variety of different decks at the higher tables. models. So it's really nice to see that there's been some diversity injected into the format. Spiral is still obviously the dominant deck, but again, we're going to cover that a lot more in depth as we get later on in the week. And last but not least, Spirit Warriors did get released last week as well, giving you guys your 6 Samurai support, your Weather Painter support, and as well as your Magibullet support, or excuse me, Magical Musketeer support. So I made a whole video discussing whether or not you should buy it and kind of the content of the set and just an analysis as a whole. So if you want to check out that video, I'll have the link in the description below. So guys, that's it for last week in Yu-Gi-Oh! Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about last week's news, and if I missed anything, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always, subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content, and if you found this video helpful, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.